Hello, YouTube viewers. This past weekend was a busy one for me. Our local Capital Public Radio station had their annual record sale, and these are all donated items, and the station goes ahead and leases a empty store for the whole weekend, and for 2 days it is a gigantic record store with everything imaginable. You can find laser discs, DVDs, videotapes, cassettes, albums, 78s, 45s, you name it, they've got it. And to say it's overwhelming is putting it mildly after being there for 2 days. Anyway, these 4 stacks are what I came home with. And I'm going to go ahead and share them with you, but in small little doses. I'm not going to do this in one gigantic video because you'll probably get frustrated and tired and want to throw your monitor at me. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with the first batch. I'm going to put some music on in the background, and we'll kind of go through these. Some interesting finds that I had. Nothing really out of the ordinary, just some good albums that I've been looking years to find. They're all in mint condition, and they were all on sale for the inexpensive price of 80 cents a piece. Normally $1, but they knock 20% off if you're a subscriber to the station. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with these. Okay, we're going to go get started with part 1 of this. The album you're listening to in the background is Arthur Murray Tangos. This was a series of albums that were put out by Capitol. They covered such dance steps as the foxtrots, mambos, modern waltzes, dance sets, cha-chas, dance and dreamtime, and waltzes. So that's what's on in the background. Now we start the stack of what I found at the record sale. The first album is called Continental Host by Raoul Maynard, performing favorite melodies from the Italian and French Rivieras. This album dates from 1961, and there are a whole bunch of these at the sale. Next is a 10-inch album, Ethel Smith's Souvenir album, Organ Solos with the Bando Carioca. This is basically an LP version of a 78 set that was issued in 1949. Then here's this album of Kay Starr on Allegro. These would be some of the non-Capitol recordings that she did. In the late 40s, she recorded for Modern Records and also for Crystalite. So these recordings were acquired by Allegro and issued on a 10-inch album. Next we have a 10-inch album on Columbia of Ella, Lena, and Billy, and these were songs by, of course, Ella Fitzgerald, Lena Horne, and Billie Holiday. It includes such songs as Nice Work If You Can Get It, Prisoner of Love, Out of Nowhere, and My Melancholy Baby. Then I have a British import that I found of Louis Armstrong and Gordon Jenkins. This was issued in England on Brunswick. And Brunswick in England was the outlet for all of the Decca recordings that were done in the United States. And whereas this one happened to have a sticker on the back that was purchased at the Air Force Base Exchange, probably by someone who was stationed from the United States over there in England and bought their album and brought it back with them. Next is Louis Armstrong and the Mills Brothers. Have the dates covered up on this. I'd say it's probably from the early 50s. It includes such songs as The Flatfoot Flugy, The Song Has Ended, Marie, and My Walking Stick. I haven't played these yet. None of these I've played yet. I've got to clean them. They're a little dusty and dirty, but they'll get a dunk in the sink. Next is a 10-inch record of Stan Kenton, Milestones. This album, again, I would date it from probably the early 50s, probably about 1950, 51. What Capitol did later on, they would issue this as a 12-inch record by adding 4 extra songs to it. Then I found this other classical album. Capitol Records in the early 50s was importing recordings from Telefunken in Germany. This one happens to be Symphony No. 40 in G minor by Mozart, by the Amsterdam Concertgebouw Orchestra. Now we get to the 12-inch. Hi-Fi Fiesta by Edmundo Ros. At the back of it, the album says, "Perfect for dancing." Next is a singer I really love. She appeared in Flower Drum Song, and this is the only other album of the 4 that she did for Victor that was missing from my collection. It's called the Pat Suzuki Miss Ponytail with Henry Renee and his orchestra. Dates from 1959. They did have a stereo issue at the record sale. Unfortunately, it had dirt ground in the grooves, and it appeared that the record had been played with a bad stylus. Next is Tommy Dorsey and the Clam Bake 7, Having a Wonderful Time. These are 16 selections of the small unit of Tommy Dorsey's orchestra called the Clam Bake 7, which did Dixieland type of music. Then Martin Denny's Quiet Village. I kind of wish this was the stereo version, but this album is getting hard to find in good condition. Most of the ones I find are pretty well needle-worn and scratched, so I was lucky to find this one. Then we have another album here from 1957, Sketches by Skitch Henderson and his orchestra. This is actually a replacement album. I have another album just like it that is not exactly in mint condition, and so I wanted to add this one to my collection, and probably the other one will end its way back over to the record sale next year. Then we have here another Capitol series called Just for Variety Volume 8. This was a series that Capitol Records did probably about 1957 through 1958, 59. What Capitol did was they took the best selections from all of their different albums and started producing all of these special albums that could be used for parties and stuff, so you could just stack them on your record changer and it would play them for hours on end and not be totally one particular single artist. Next I found one that was totally sealed, Eddie Duchin and his orchestra, Music for Dancing. And these appear to be his Brunswick recordings from 32 to 38. So I was lucky to find this one. Then another ragtime piano artist I like, Joe Fingers Cara, the world's greatest ragtime piano player. I'm lucky I found this album in stereo. It'll be replacing a mono copy that I have in my collection. Next is a soprano that I really love. I've loved her singing for the last 20 years, Kiri Te Kanawa. She originally comes from New Zealand and has been singing since the 1960s. This happens to be an album of Mozart concert arias. And it was, at first I thought it was sealed. It had the shrink wrap on it, and it was really a very tight binding on it. And I found out it had been played, looked like only once. It was in excellent condition. Next, an album I didn't even know existed. Harry Belafonte did a Christmas album, To Wish You a Merry Christmas, Harry Belafonte, with orchestra and chorus conducted by Bob Corman. This album came out in 1958. Next is Eileen Farrell, Here I Go Again, with Luther Henderson and his orchestra. Again, this is a stereo issue I found that will be replacing a mono copy that's in my collection. I don't know if any of you out there remember the Julia Show from the early, I guess, 1970s, maybe as far back as the late 60s, starring Diana Carroll. Well, in 1962, she did an album called Showstoppers. It was one of her very early albums that she did with as a singer, and RCA must not have thought she was very important at the time, because they put her on the RCA Camden label. Next is the recordings by Eddie Duchin that were featured in the Eddie Duchin story. And I don't think these were used in the movie, because I have another album that was done with, let's see, it was done by another artist on Capitol. So I think Columbia was trying to capitalize on the movie, and they put out an album of all his 78 recordings. Next is another vocal album, classical, Songs of Debussy, and this happens to be a series that Angel Records did called Great Recordings of the Century. And this happens to feature the soprano Maggie Tate and the pianist Alfred Cortot. And the recordings in this album date from 35 to 44. And I have other albums in this series, and Angel Records did an excellent job of transferring these. Next is an album by the Hollywood Bowl called Gypsy. I really like these FDS recordings that Capitol issued. They were very good sounding for their day. They predated the stereo era, and the fidelity is phenomenal on these. Another singer from the 60s that I liked, Michelle Lee. I happen to remember the song L. David Sloan. It was very popular, I remember, on the radio in the LA area in the late 60s. And the last album for this segment is I'm going to show is George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. And see if I can find a date on this. 1951. Columbia started dating their records on the bottom of the spine here. And this is a 3-record set, and I really like Porgy and Bess, and I like to collect various recordings by different artists. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for now, and we'll start part 2.